It is the last weekend of the Heroes Global Championship for North America and Europe before the Western Clash, and teams are scrambling for seeding and good standings going into Part 2. I'm Gillyweed, as always, here with my co-commentator Dreadnought. Dread, over in Europe, that last matchup, Tricked Esports maybe bringing more of a fight to Misfits than Misfits bargained for.
Yeah, it was definitely a pleasant surprise to see that out of Tricked Esports, but in the end, Misfits remained strong and was able to pull out the win.
Well, moving on to North America, we're going to take a look at the standings here for HGC North America. The top 3 teams and the teams going to the Western Clash have been decided. Those are going to be Tempo Storm, Team 8, and Gale Force Esports, while the rest of the teams now are just vying for good enough standings out of this Part 1 and into Part 2. But the top 3 in North America, unlike Europe, those standings are not concrete, even going into this weekend. So they're really trying to play for standings and their seeding going into the Western Clash, since they will be up against such strong teams coming out of Europe.
Yeah, very much so. And even the teams, that aren't going to be going to the Clash, still, looking towards Part 2 and the situation to be able to, not be knocked into the Crucible. It's going to be very important. All placements, all matches are going to matter here, and this weekend is no exception.
It isn't, and we've got 2 more matches for North America coming up. So let's take a look at the schedule and see how things will be shaken down. After HGC Korea, we kicked things off in HGC Europe, with Fnatic taking a fairly easy victory over Playing Ducks, although Playing Ducks did take 1 game away from them. But like I said, Tricked Esports really bringing the fight to Misfits in that series, going all the way to Game 5 on Warhead Junction. If you missed that, head on over to playheroes.com/esports to be able to catch that crazy series. We'll be ending things today with B-Step versus Team Naventic, a match with a lot of history between the players, but we're kicking off with No Tomorrow versus Gale Force Esports. Dread.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun match, and it's obviously Gale Force Esports is probably projected to be the winner of this match. Very dominant performance for them so far, but as you were talking about, the positioning still is going to be relevant here for them going into the Clash itself, and I also think it's a little bit of maybe sending a message to their opponents. These are going to be the most recent VODs that maybe studying Gale Force Esports at the Clash are going to see, and the most dominant performance might put fear into their hearts. So, how they win is equally important.
Absolutely. Gale Force Esports wants to come in and not give too many strategies away, especially since they are a team, as we saw last week, who likes to prepare. But before we get more into this match, let's hear what the players themselves have to say about this matchup.
At least most of them, Talking Trees, Urho, Jason, they've all been in the scene for so long. And I think if they play what they're good at, again, they'll be a very good roster. But they're kind of have the same issue that some teams have, is they're a very emotional roster. Like, I know Trees and Urho, both very emotional players. I think everyone knows that about them. But it'll pretty much be on the veterans to help like the new guys like Casanova like rise to the top. If they can get that team synergy going and keep those players at a veteran level, or play at a veteran level, they'll be a good team.
Gale Force Esports? I feel as if Gale Force is gonna fall out of top 4. I don't think they're that good. I think the whole hype of them being a top 4 team, not anymore.
I think they're really growing, and they have a lot of players like Casanova and Jason who are kind of like still growing, and they haven't really like even reached close to their peak yet. Casanova in particular, that is a player that I've followed for a while, and I'm really excited to see this new blood in the scene. I think this is a really strong team, and their play style is just very meta. They just run standard heroes, and they're like, we're gonna out team fight you. So essentially, what they're saying is, we're gonna prove that we're better than you mechanically, which that means you got big balls. Like that's something that not a lot of teams will do to the other top tier teams. So that's something where I'm really excited to watch them grow. I think the first time we play them, we'll probably beat them pretty handily, but depending on how well they grow, I think the second time in the season could be like a really, really good match where they have like really grown into themselves and become a really good team.
Ooh, Gale Force. I love playing against them because Michael and Aka during Collegiate and Dorm, I played them at Collegiate Coliseum, which was this little side tournament in Cali, and they were like, hey, you should try and go pro after that. I'd only been playing for a few months. So they've kind of like mentored me, and so I'm just ready to like beat the crap out of them.
Michael talking about, depending on what time of the season we play versus No Tomorrow, it could be a very strong matchup. And we have started to see some of that growth and improvement coming together from No Tomorrow, especially last weekend when they finally were able to take down Team Freedom. Airho, the big part for the team, coming together and starting to stay with the team and be a cohesive unit versus where it seemed at times to be almost two separate teams. But do you think that No Tomorrow have improved enough by that point to really be able to bring it to Gale Force?
I want to say yes, but it doesn't feel that way, at least not yet for the group. I do think that they gained a little bit, their momentum a little bit too late. You know, the performance last week was by far probably the best that we've seen this group of players perform. And so it just seems a little bit too late to be the team who can put up, you know, a really solid fight, even pull out a win against Gale Force Esports. That being said, I think you'd all had a really good point talking about, you know, maybe the second time around in the long run. But again, I think it's just a little too slow on that progress.
We're going to take a look at the Battleground pool for HGC and see what our first map will be. Looking at what the teams banned No Tomorrow, banned Warhead Junction from Gale Force Esports. Gale Force understanding, showing off once again their preparation for a matchup, banning out Dragonshire, which has been the main battleground for No Tomorrow. And the No Tomorrow are going to pick Sky Temple. Yeah,
it's an interesting choice to see him moving on to Sky Temple, largely because it's not a favorite. It's not a neglected map. It's just kind of, you know, it's a map in our pool overall. No team has been really leaning towards it as an overall, you know, strength for the group of players. So, I mean, I don't look at that as like, you know, maybe a tell one way or another for strategy, but I do find it kind of appealing to see them mix things up once Dragonshire has moved away, going on to Sky.
So Sky does tend to be their second favorite battleground, but my concern for them is how much do they understand the drafting on Sky for Gale Force Esports, because Gale Force can be very unforgiving with previous styles in the past when we look at things like their globals. Their Zeratul is incredible too. No Tomorrow only get so many bans to try to stop that from Gale Force.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough position for them to be able to be into. So we'll see how this draft plays out. For now, it's going to be relatively standard when it comes to the bans. Gale Force going with the Mouth. Tassadar is going to be removed here. So do we see the Falstad or the Zeratul? It's going to be the Zeratul here for Gale Force Esports. No surprise, rising to the top of North America when it comes to priority on any of the large maps. Zeratul really, you know, is kind of making wakes here.
And this position before No Tomorrow have traditionally picked Ragnaros up along with probably Rhaegar, seeing the Malfurion ban. But that's not necessarily the case. If they want to leave it until later on, Tiger JK also feels very comfortable with Karzim if they want to do something like Falstad Ragnaros instead, or even get their warrior here.
Yeah, Ragnaros is weird when it comes to Sky Temple in terms of the value that he provides, because he doesn't do too well when it comes to his, you know, just overall skirmishing. He does okay in that department, and wave clear isn't overly dominant. You can't play the Zul game too easily, and then he doesn't complement the map objective itself. So the value of that hero probably drops, I would say, almost maybe the most when it comes to Sky Temple. So we'll see if they go that direction. I do think I would love to see the Falstad pick up, but instead it's going to be more of the Varian and the Ragnaros, keeping the lockdown game alive here for North America.
Now, Gale Force Esports have a possibility of just getting Falstad Brightwing here, or maybe Falstad and their own warrior if they want to get ETC, or get Dahaka if they want to just flood with globals once again. I do think Falstad will be one of those two, though, for them.
Yeah, and it just pairs so well, right? Anytime you have a Zeratul Falstad, your boss control becomes almost unstoppable. They work well together with the zone control into the team fights itself. It's a really solid play all around. And it goes to Gale Force Esports strengths. We know that they are good on large maps when they run things like the Falstad, even the Brightwing here and there. But we'll see where they move into the picks.
With a ban on Malfurion, I'm wondering if instead it'll be Falstad and then something like a Zarya, so later on that they can get Brightwing and have shielding from that. Not necessarily, though, Zarya's best battleground. Actually, she has an 80% on Sky Temple, so I must be thinking of a different one. Rhaegar Li Ming. What do you make of this?
I love the Li Ming with the Zeratul pairing. It's probably Li Ming's second best map, probably in the entire game, and then it synergizes very well, you know, with the Zeratul there. But going into the Rhaegar again with the mouth ban, I think it's pretty heads-up play here so far, GFE. Because again, then it puts them in a position to have a very free cleanse. If they move into the Brightwing, into the Varian matchup, it just hurts so much. The pre-cleanse maybe not even going to be enough to the taunt play that you typically see out of Varian, because then it's just one taunt, but then the next time it comes in, which is faster than that, you need that burst healing, and Rhaegar is going to make up for it. So I love it. Gale Force here, again, showing, you know, their consideration of the map and their thought process going into the draft, very calculated.
leading to is a Crowan Classic.
Yeah.
But it does mean that we'll have somebody else playing the Warrior for Gale Force Esports. Before, we've seen and we've agreed that Crowan tends to be the most successful Warrior for Gale Force. So we'll see what they want to choose to go along with their composition. No Tomorrow says, well, it won't be ETC. You don't get to have a Power Slide Mosh Pit after a Void Prison because that is, you've already got a scary enough comp as it is.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see since we played on this recent patch that Diablo has been far less of a fear when it comes to the Zeratul combo across the board. It was just, Diablo's absolutely terrifying, especially with Zeratul, and now past that patch, it's just completely dropped off the radar, I think, for a lot of the teams here. And I'm not saying that it's right or wrong or anything. It's just a trend that we've seen. It's just the Zeratul, and it's like, oh, so typically this leads to the Diablo ban, but since the patch, it's just untouched.
But the only patch changes that affected that, right, are from the Shadows, and then Domination. Later on, you don't get Overpower cooldown reduced, but you still get the cooldown reduction on Shadow Charge.
Debatably not a big enough nerf to drop that heavy in priority. That's what I'm talking about. Like I said, I don't think it's right or wrong. It's just surprising to see that heavy shift when you can't look at it. Will be like, oh, well, I mean, this got nerfed pretty dramatically. Probably going to gain a little less value here. It's just overall, it's like Diablo's almost untouched, and then still heavy priority bans onto other heroes.
The other ban for Gale Force Esports was Tychus. And that is a No Tomorrow favorite when it comes to damage dealers. So No Tomorrow may switch up then instead and try to get Vala at this point for Jason. Although Jason, I'm trying to think of the three that he plays most, and I think it's Vala, Tychus, and then Zarya as well.
Yeah, No Tomorrow. I don't know. They're in a weird spot when it comes to the draft. It's going to be the Karazim picked up here. We've seen quite a lot of Karazim. Actually, an interesting thing when I was looking at some of the statistics and the fall set, I like the fall set pickup a lot here for No Tomorrow, but Karazim has almost seen no influence on a draft at all until after the secondary ban phase. Like, legitimately not even looked at across the board. He only sees play into the back half, which is very rare when it comes to pick priority, but it just, again, shows kind of the, the hierarchy that we have when it comes to just supports overall. We have our Malfurion, then you've got, a couple other, and then on the back half is going to be that Karazim.
Last two for Gale Force Esports, still needing a Warrior. I do think it will be Diablo at this point.
Yeah,
and what's the fifth? We've got Fan Crowan.
They could move into a Murd and pick up two, and I don't think it would be that rough. I do like the idea of the Diablo probably the most into their opponents, but it is a little bit scary knowing that Falset is on the other side to be able to Gust as a counter momentum to the Apocalypse play, so maybe that's enough of a deterrent. But overall, Murden is an option here, one that doesn't see very high priority ever in North America, but I think he's kind of undervalued overall.
I wondered what it was going to be.
Was it a logical decision?
Did
you expect that one?
I did not think that it would be a logical decision. Well, it would be a logical decision for them, but not the actual literal logical decision of Abathur. The reason being is I was wondering who was going to play what, looking at a lot of the Michael Udall heroes, which are either banned or taken away from No Tomorrow. So Abathur, Johanna.
I really would have liked that to be a Diablo if they were going the Abathur route. Like, we've talked about, why Diablo here and there, but more importantly than anything, with this draft that they've managed to be able to pick up, the blind is the idea, I think, behind going Johanna above all else. But when you have Abathur, you only have a small window to be effective into the team fights itself. Obviously, his split pushing and other things are terrifying, but Zeratul is going to be able to aid with that, and then using the clone, if you have a follow-up Apocalypse, it gets a lot more value and force value out of having that clone into the fight. And Dahaka is now going to be the last pick here for No Tomorrow. Interesting, having this double global, double warrior, a lot of health bars for No Tomorrow, but it is a little bit, kind of what they like to run for the most part. They like their beefy heroes overall. And kind of old schoolish, a little creative approach on the side of Gale Force Esports. This is a really interesting draft.
Is this a draft from No Tomorrow where we'll see Talking Trees play the support and then Tiger JK play Falstad again?
That's a good question. It looks like it's not going to be the case, but you're right. Yeah. And I got to talk to Tiger JK after that game on the thought process behind it. And a little bit was just mainly about the communication with rotations. They just thought that him on certain heroes, there was a couple they had practiced back in the day that they thought he would be a little bit more effective on. So that's why they were willing to do that. That one game, in case you're wondering, why did Tiger JK suddenly play a range and then he's always back on the support elsewhere? So it doesn't look like it's going to be the case for this game, but I like a lot of No Tomorrow's draft for the most part. The Dahaka Falstad for them, I love. It's really low value in North America across the board, but I think they not only accent the map, but objectively just very strong and influential heroes on their side of the battlefield.
And they have two different ways of making sure that Abathur does not get the split push that he would like to be doing. So Gale Force Esports now are put into the position where they really have to make sure that they are buying a lot of time for Abathur at Shrines, being very aggressive, fighting 4v5, whatever they need to do to make sure that Abathur gets that value. It likely is going to be a double Zeratul, maybe, I guess, a double Li Ming. I will say that when I saw Gale Force Esports run this Zeratul Abathur on Curse Hollow in the qualifiers, I wasn't super convinced. I didn't think that the clone of Zeratul did very much, but it's a different composition of who's playing what, and I'm sure, as it's Gale Force Esports, that it's very well practiced.
Yeah, and one thing to consider, too, is the amount of high health bars on the opposite side of the battlefield are good against Zeratul. The lack of kill potential onto that. So I think the lack of convincing is only more severe considering the composition on the other side, having 3 heroes that should be able to survive most in the engagement there. It is interesting. Do you double clone Zeratul? Do you double clone Li Ming? I personally like going with Zeratul. Li Ming is too... How do I say this? It's too easy to see where they're looking to get value out of it, whereas the Zeratul, you never know if which is the real Zeratul flanking you, which one's not going to be the stealth priority, and then just the bonus damage that it gains out of having that clone suddenly makes his damage spike just ridiculous. One of the few heroes that's very successful untalented. That being said, Li Ming's good too. It's too straightforward most of the time whenever you see that Li Ming. It's waiting on a big void.
Well, once again, we're seeing a crazy composition come out from Gale Force Esports. We'll see if it works out for them in this game number 1 versus No Tomorrow on Sky Temple.
And so here on the left-hand side in the blue is No Tomorrow. Tiger JK there is going to be onto the Karzim Talking Trees here on Falstad. Casanova is going to be playing the Ragnaros. We're going to see Jason there onto the Dahaka, and I missed Urho playing the Variant.
And over on the red side are the members of Gale Force Esports. Their support player Akaface playing Rhaegar. Equinox will be the one playing Warrior this time, playing Johanna. Michael Udall will be the one on the slug that is Abathur. Crowan will be playing his Li Ming. And finally, Fan, once again, we get a treat of having a Fan Zeratul.
A Fan Zeratul. I'm a fan of Fan Zeratul.
Me too, man.
Is that how that works?
Yes.
It sounds a little weird, but it's going to work out. We do see Abathur moving already into the mines. Everybody else, when it comes to talent here, is going to be what we'd expect. But for now, No Tomorrow's going to get a little bit of damage there onto the top turret.
It's notable, too, because it takes a little while for Abathur to really ramp up in his splitting. And so whatever damage that No Tomorrow can do is going to be doubly effective for them. Not only do they get to put some damage down that makes, for instance, if they focus on this top temple, even more valuable. It can start to put shots onto the top fort instead of wasting them, you might say, on towers, but then just trying to open up the map in No Tomorrow's advantage so that it's even scarier for Abathur to push later on.
Yeah, it's a really good strategy here, and it's one that I think No Tomorrow's ran a couple of times onto Sky. It seems like they put a lot of priority here onto the top half of the map, specifically for them. But yeah, the number one thing you do anytime you have an Abathur on your opponent's side is just push in the early game, push as hard as you possibly can, because his weak early game is just so far behind, especially having the Zeratul. He wants to roam. He's going to take another person out of the lane. So No Tomorrow's doing a decent job trying to capitalize on this, weakness of the draft of GFE. But yet, they didn't really gain too much considering the first Shrines now are going to be spawning.
Even keeping Dahaka in the bottom lane, it forced Johanna to come down to help Rhaegar out, so they're going to be sort of later coming in just now for the temple activation. Looks like Gale Force Esports want to move in, focusing on Jason. He's going to drag back. He has his essence healing. Stays nice and healthy for this, and they're going to trade on temples, but No Tomorrow are the ones keeping Varian in the top so that they can make sure that even if Tiger JK gets pushed off of mid, it's going to start chunking down that top fort.
Yeah, this is a weird position to be in if you're No Tomorrow right now into the draft.
I wonder if they're going to pick Mule, they being Gale Force Esports.
Yeah, they have the opportunity there with the Abathur. I was like, Mule, and he doesn't have Mule, but you're right.
Doesn't Mule things,
Abathur,
he just fights them.
Abathur has the opportunity to go Mule, but the talent trade-off for his Mule maybe, how do I say that, a little bit more severe than most supports, although that sounds absolutely radical. Fan, I don't think you're going to be making out here, Casanova. But mainly because Cleanse is at the same, opportunity, at the same talent tier there, so the trade-off to lose a Cleanse for the Mule. But Abathur specifically going with, now that we know he's going into mine builds, it's just losing the slow opportunity is insane. And the control over the map drops severely. His split pushing potential drops severely, and they've already lost so much in the early parts that it's a pretty big risk. Because forts are typically the only thing you can really save with that mule early on into the game, kind of stalling out Shrine 1, 2, and 3 maybe. Past that point,
True.
mule gains almost 0 value onto the map here. So I don't know. Like I said, I'm not saying that I think that it's a bad choice, but the risk and trade-off is drastically more severe than most supports.
So one thing I do like about Mule, though, is if they did use it on a keep, they might force hasty decisions from No Tomorrow that
That's a
they
good
could
point.
punish in that side, especially like if it happened to be their bottom keep later on, they start to heal that up, they force No Tomorrow to come in over that death bridge and then void prison everyone and obliterate them with flaming resets. We'll have to see. Abathur will be going into level 7 soon, and we'll see if it will be more just the slow off of his nest or if Mule is the pickup.
For now, it looks like it's going to be an invade here for Gale Force Esports down to Talents here, so a risky choice coming out from them. Maybe relying on the Abathur hat, but for now it's just going to be a little bit of the poke. Team's playing very patient so far. No Tomorrow has done a good job in the early Shrine phase, so like we said, to be able to punish, but they haven't done anything during the second rotation almost at all. This might be the moment where they look to make it happen, but with Ragnaros into the mid lane, it doesn't look like we're going to see that, you know, traditional 4-man commitment to the bottom Giants and objective and getting that siege up here. So overall, I guess what I'm trying to say for No Tomorrow is, yes, they have been able to punish the Abathur effect a little bit, but not as much as you want. And I feel like Gale Force, at least the Abathur, will be able to make up for that experience purely in soak as the game moves on.
How much do you think No Tomorrow needs to get done before, say, the real pushing power of Abathur comes in? Do you like to see a keep?
I would say probably when it comes to experience, you can sit like around a level to a level and a half would be a comfortable distance over your opponent, because again, his ability to stall is very easy as the game moves on. But then if it comes down to just raw structures, a minimum would be like looking to get that bottom fort or another fort just on your own, right? Purely before that 10 spike hits. And it doesn't look like that's going to be the case or the opportunity, because the only moment they had there was during that push onto the bottom half there.
Gale Force are giving up the bottom temple, understanding that it is still that earlier game and they want to just get some map opened up for Abathur to start that push. So they're going to focus on this top fort, especially because they did get a kill on Jason as Dahaka too. So they're evening up experience as much as they can. They're still down a level, so they're not looking to fight until they can get their own heroic abilities. No Tomorrow are about to pick them up for themselves.
Yeah, and there's going to be the transition towards mid. So this spike needs to be a very good punishment. When I was talking about getting a fort for free on its own, it would be right now with this 10 spike, looking to open up the map as fast as possible. Past this point, like, Boss doesn't really do much because it only buys more time for Gale Force to get soak, and you know they're not going to siege with it. So looking for this kind of power play onto mid, then making the rotation now mid front wall, right onto the keep. The opening this map is a huge power play against their composition. You know, a pick on Equinox would only be a cherry on top here. Gets the retreat. Abathur hat there with the shield. He's going to be just fine on his way out. But this will be the mid fort here, falling for No Tomorrow as they've secured themselves that level and a half I was talking about. Very well done. No Tomorrow has the experience advantage they need into the composition that Gale Force has.
Notable heroic abilities, no adaptation for Dahaka, even though he has been sitting up in the top lane, and a lot of people who are solo soaking as Dahaka like to pick up adaptation there, but instead getting isolation, more of a response potentially for Zeratul if he becomes a problem, as well as Tom. This is an issue. Gale Force Esports do not have heroic abilities. Gus goes down, and beautiful taunt. Airho making sure nobody gets on the point, and Gale Force Esports now have to defend versus this boss just as they get heroics.
Yeah, that was one of those awkward situations where, oh goodness, the Blessed Shield comes in, the Condemn there, Tiger JK drops the palm, but it's not going to be procced. He ends up going down. They cost the clone, which is pretty much nothing. Jason here is going to lie victim now to GFE and their aggressive transition here. Fan looking for a pick. He's going to drop the Void. I don't think they have the tools for this. Equinox Condemn's about as good as it gets here, and they don't have it there. Urho on his way out. So Furious Smash is a response, but the boss is now pushing the entire time here. It's going to be able to get a little damage there to the keep wall.
Starts working on the towers here, but that's the experience boost that Gale Force Esports needed, and this whole time they bought some time for Abathur to keep and continue soaking up in the top lane.
I managed to do a little bit of research during this matchup. When I was talking about the Ragnaros pick specifically and the value that it gains to this map, Ragnaros on Sky Temple specifically does sit at this weird, like, 28% win rate across North America specifically, and showing that he is one of the highest win rate heroes across the board, but then he just doesn't accent this map specifically that well.
Yeah, there's no forced to take over to defend versus a Zerg Rush.
Yes.
Or even the Web Weavers. There's just nothing that he can do really except maybe buy some shots from a temple, which is generally not
there's no
what you want to
stall.
be using him for.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and it's just it's an interesting thing because Ragnaros is kind of a jack of all trades, and this is really the only map where he doesn't have that scenario here. But no, tomorrow they're making it look good here, sitting with 13 talents here soon, going to be picked up. The shots, full structural advantage over their opponents here. But Gale Force Esports, you see them slowly creeping up into that experience over time. That is what I like to call the Abathur effect.
But No Tomorrow still are working on taking down the keep in the bottom lane, and with the damage that the boss did to the towers, besides the fact that yes, No Tomorrow lost a couple of members, Gale Force Esports did choose to chase them down and get kills versus going back right away and defending versus the boss. That opens up now a potential way for No Tomorrow to win the game if they should be able to wipe Gale Force Esports because that keep is down.
Yeah, this is a tough position for Gale Force Esports. Now being down a keep this early into the game on this map and losing that many structures over to their opponents, you know, they might be wishing they had the mule now at this point of the game here. A level down, I'm trying to find the situation where they have the win condition, and a lot of it just comes down to avoid, you know, Blessed Shield power play coming out from them, timing it with the clone. But again, that window is so small. If they aren't efficient with that void, with that clone, it's very unrealistic for them to be able to be successful into these team fights. You know, considering the default kits on the side of No Tomorrow are just naturally not only shorter cooldowns, but just better overall.
And as long as No Tomorrow can keep this lead, there will be maybe a point where they have 16 ahead and can try to start that fight at that point. Maybe bait out a few heroic abilities to even sweeten the deal, but that boss is a win point for No Tomorrow. It still will be early on if they take it right when it comes back up, but it is now, it would head straight to core.
My goodness, No Tomorrow here, already just the fact that they've even managed to put up this good of a fight so far, you know, this much calculated play, showing the transition that this group of players has seemed to make. Last week was the first time we got a sniff of it, but right now, you know, they seem to be totally on point into their game. Both these teams had an impressive last week, to be honest, but just No Tomorrow is one that I didn't expect to be this well thought out and this good of a start to a series against Gale Force.
But like versus Tempo Storm, Gale Force Esports had all of the time to pick, okay, we're gonna pick this battle round, we're gonna pick Sky, and then we are going to go for, oh, actually, No Tomorrow picked Sky, so never mind. Gale Force Esports did have to rely on, okay, what do we think No Tomorrow will pick? If we ban Dragonshire, maybe they will pick Sky, since that was one before, so it was less of a possibility for them to prepare in the same way they did versus Tempo Storm.
Not nearly as heavy of patterns when it comes to priority there.
Exactly.
You know, sometimes the lack of information is one of the biggest tools you can use in competitive Heroes of the Storm. But for now, we're sitting in an awkward situation for Gale Force Esports. In fact, they've got 3 catapults pushing on the bottom. They're close to losing 16 talents here, and the shrines are going to be spawning. Does No Tomorrow risk this engagement, or do they transition towards bottom? It looks like they're going to give Gale Force a little bit of the shots, dance around, question the positioning, but overall it's going to be forfeited here. Gale Force, knowing that everybody's going to be committed to bottom, should be able to get more value out of the Abathur. A lot more value out of it so far, but I can't help but question, maybe they're worried about having him back there for the catapult
Yeah,
clear?
that bottom lane is a problem that somebody has to clear it. But Gale Force Esports, because there were some structures in the bank, has finally evened out on experience and are even going to get to their 16 talent here just slightly before No Tomorrow. So this is finally the point where Gale Force Esports has clawed their way back enough into the game that they can start to look for those big 5v5 fights. And they need to, because they are still behind structurally.
It's just amazing to see that Gale Force can be ahead in experience here. Again, that shows the value of Abathur as a hero overall. It's 6 teams for both sides. Dahaka is still looking to get the clear, but that mid keep, I don't know if it's going to be falling off of these shots. It looks like it will be going down, so that 2 keep advantage is enough. Gale Force, though, being on the even experience, they're in a position to where now they can actually take these fights. Talking about fights, that's going to be a Void Clone.
And Fan going after trees. Gus comes out. Here comes Jason looking for a drag too. Mike Udall has cloned Zeratul, double Zeratul situation. There is Blessed Shield 2. Here comes Crowan looking for his reset. Sulfuris smashed down in the middle of the fight, and it's mass chaos, but Crowan still hoping that he can get a reset off of some of these health bars.
Yeah, they need more kills, though, if you're Gale Force Esports, because, again, that pressure that's happening elsewhere onto the map. Abathur's going to be there for the clear. One more now falling down. That's going to be the Molten Core out here.
Swing!
Throw the swing. Casanova looking to turn this fight, but
He's going to pop out in a bad spot.
yeah, it seems like, you know, a star that burns the brightest lives the shortest here. But oh, that palm very early on. He's going to be able to make it out, and that cost Tiger JK his life, though, when it comes to the punches there. Good job with that you know, Calamity value for Crowan. I thought those Giants were going to wreak havoc for a moment there, but then luckily the minute the clone dropped, Abathur was back, and I was like, okay, they're good. I was like, by time, you might be able to win the game, but then sadly Abathur there to crush Dreams, as Abathur does best, really. It feels like, you know, transitions, you hit a mine, one Dream crush, you know, having the opportunity to take a 4 versus 5, he just drops a clone, everything, you know, he's just an anti.
Who's more of the fun police? Is it Abathur or Medivh?
Oh, definitely Medivh.
Oh,
I think
without a doubt, Medivh.
Medivh just, yeah, he takes all the fun and he just deletes it. Whereas Abathur, like, makes you think it exists for a moment, and then he's like, nah, dude.
Wait, isn't that worse, to give you hope and then dash it?
You might be right. I haven't actually thought about that. Maybe, I don't know. It
Philosophical thoughts about fun police right here in the HGC.
Shrine's gonna be up. No talent tier advantage when it comes to heroics. 11 on Ancestral.
The Void is here.
The Void is there. Mikey Doll, though, burning that clone, not getting enough damage onto trees. Is going to put him in a tough spot now. There's a aggressive flight coming out from trees. Very deep there. It's going to Gust. Akafe is in a tough spot. There's the top, but the Void's going to buy him time. That's one dead bird.
But Akafe might just go down right along with him. He's silenced from isolation. He goes down. Tunneling Claws for Jason. Gets him out of the fight. Tiger JK dives back in onto Equinox.
Oh.
There's no indestructible yet. He gets the kill. He palms himself. He goes up to Crowan.
That was the most aggressive. He was like, I'm a pre-palm. I don't care. If you Calamity on top, I've got this. I'm going to punch your face in. But he did confirm one kill. And in fact, this is a sweet position if you are a No Tomorrow fan, because now we have this third shot, or these next shrines shooting at the third keep here. And that is, it's probably going to be falling down as well structurally, looking at the top lane here. Just not very much left there. It will, I think the keep will fall still. I think the scaling on the shots is long enough now to where it can take a keep all on its own. We'll find out though, the clone's gonna be dropped. Quickly snipped out here for the team. They're just gonna, you know, punch that one to death and walk away.
And that is another cooldown that's down now for Gale Force. If they want to take a fight, they have to take it essentially 4v5. They will have Symbiote, and they did build into Symbiote a little bit at 13 and 16, going with so much transference. It can give some healing, as well as the slow Envenom spikes too, to help Zeratul really stick to his target. Not that Zeratul needs that sort of help. He is terrifying once he gets to that point.
In fact, was not enough damage though onto the top keep, so it's sitting at about half HP. But I mean, obviously, any other rotation of shots will be able to confirm that and now look towards the core. Mine's going to sniff out Tiger JK here as the dance around boss looks like it's going to come into play soon. Dahak is going to be able to apply pressure there in top 4 No Tomorrow. Boss is not something that either of these teams really want to mess with. When it comes to actual boss control, I would have to hand it over to No Tomorrow. Void is good, but that's the only real tool. Indestructible at 20 is one of the better boss control or talents, I guess you can get as well. But I would be way more afraid of Gust, you know, Taunt, having Palm. There's a lot of really good tools. So we'll see though. Gale Force here is going to start it with their 20 advantage. Nobody's going to be there to sniff it out yet for No Tomorrow.
They're trying desperately to get Storm Talents before they take this fight, and this boss is melting.
No Tomorrow.
They're not going to do it. They're going to go in.
Oh,
Airho's trying to dive in.
Oh,
watch for Gust. Void on Gust. He's not going to be there. Airho and Tiger on the point.
20's going to be picked up. Void now drops. The Gust going to be used. Palm ends up hitting the proc. Isolation used. Johanna is going to get that indestructible. There's the ancestral healing. Jason looking towards the backline, gets the drag onto Akaface. Crowan's getting punched, but that's a kill onto the backline. Gale Force pulling ahead. Now Urho staying on the point. Everybody's there. Now Casanova looking to get that smashing there, but the resets one after another. Crowan cleans that fight.
Gale Force Esports walk away with a 5-man team wipe over No Tomorrow and get the boss. 53 seconds until Ragnaros can come in and hope to help with his Molten Core, but I don't know if it's going to be enough, Dread.
It is a tough position, but really Gale Force has to force this. This is really their win condition, again, because they are so far behind. So can they do it is the real question, and I don't think the answer is yes here at this point, just with these three, this boss being only the 16-minute mark. It's going to be a tough one. It's definitely going to be close here. They've done a good job getting the damage out. I don't know, actually. 17 before Falstad spawns. Okay, this is going to be a little tough. I don't think Gus is going to have enough because Void isn't up.
They're
oh my goodness, they aren't even going to...
They're spreading in a way that's good too.
They've got it, they've got it.
Hit. Boss gets onto core. Gale Force Esports down and out in this game for a majority of it, but in the end, forcing the boss forcing No Tomorrow to make a hasty decision and walking away with that game.
Yeah, that was infinite more damage than I expected coming out of that trio. And just the boss fight, you know, the reason, in case you guys are wondering why I said just give up the boss, is largely because that, again, was one of the few scenarios they could have risked losing that game. They could have let the boss go for free and then take the fight later on, moving past it around core, because it's not a free win at that point in time. But
Yeah.
it's one of those situations where, again, maybe they thought, well, we talked about boss control, maybe they felt they had the better boss control once they hit the 20, but it was a very good job from Crow in there on the Lee Ming, getting those resets to be able to get the kills.
But it's one thing to lose the boss. It's another to lose the boss and all 5 of your teammates that late into the game when
Yeah.
you have Ragnaros who can take a significant amount of time with Molten Core. So hopefully this doesn't go to the heads of No Tomorrow. They don't start freaking out because they did all the right things versus that Apather composition early on. We're going to take a break, and when we return, we'll have game number 2 between Gale Force and No Tomorrow.